and welcome back to Shitty Gaming. So today we're going to be looking at one of my all-time favorite consoles, the mighty 3DO. This here is the FZ10 model. There were two Panasonic models, the FZ10 and then the FZ1. The FZ1 is probably the one most people are more familiar with. That was the front-loading tray that would come out. You play it like a kind of like a traditional console. The FZ10, was put out later in the lifespan of the console, and it is the get rid of the tray top loader kind of budget model of the 3DO. Because I'm sure, as you're all aware, the 3DO was around $600-700 when it came out in the early 90s. My FZ10 here shows September of 95 when it was made. This was my first 3DO. I got into the 3DO, actually, and I'm going to blame a friend of mine, Craig, for this, because it's all his fault, really. He was pretty much a big game collector. He pretty much had one of everything. Might not have had a huge amount of games for everything, but he had every console made, probably from at least the Super NES up through, I believe, the 360 and the PS3. I mean, every console that came out, all or over that time frame. So I got exposed to a lot of games over at his house. So I remember playing the 3DO over there, playing a lot of different games on it. It just kind of clicked with me. I don't know why. Maybe I bought into the promise of the interactive CD. But you got to remember, at the time, I was pretty much, what gaming I did have was the standard stuff, the NES, Super NES, Genesis, that sort of thing. Like, I remember my buddy had a Genesis. I remember we had the NES and Super NES. But mostly other systems like 3DO, CDI, anything else that might have even been out that time, even the TurboGrafx or the TurboGrafx CD, nobody had that stuff. That was like either really expensive or limited production run or both. So people just didn't have it. So Craig having everything was a real eye-opener for me, and actually really kicked off my gaming collection that I still do today. So Craig gets a lot of credit for that. But the 3DO, I remember seeing it. If I remember right, I think he had a gold star. If I remember right. It was, I'm pretty sure it was a gold star. So got exposed to a lot of games. It was probably the first real system that I saw full motion video on. And it made a big impression on me. And you got to remember, now you look back on that stuff and it's all crap, because, what we have today, or even what the Saturn and the PS1 brought, was a lot different than it was back then. Because back then, remember, you had vinyl records, and then you had 8-tracks, which were like a cartridge for a tape, and then you had actual cassette tapes, and then you had cartridges for video games, and that was about it. Then, of course, you got your VHS tapes, and of course, I guess you had Laserdisc, which never caught on in the US. So you didn't really have a lot of options, or if you had, they were clunky, and they just they all had their issues. Like, Laserdiscs were nice, and the video was really nice, but it only held an hour of video on a side. So you weren't going to get, very much stuff. You had to pay like an obnoxious amount of money to get a Laserdisc player that would not have to flip the disc when you were watching it. So then the what I like to call the attempts at grown-up consoles, I guess, at the time, because Nintendo targeted kids, so everybody else kind of did. Sega targeted teenagers, and most people didn't think there was really a market for older people at that point after the crash and all that stuff. So the 3DO, the CDI especially, assumed that there was an older adult demographic that would be interested in gaming and software that wasn't necessarily just for gaming. So that's why they came out so early. They came out with this higher price software, game consoles, that sort of thing. So I mean, the original 3DO I believe was what, $600 $700 when it came out in like 90 what, 3 4 whenever it came out. I mean, that was an obnoxious amount of money back then. I mean, the Neo Geo I don't even think was that expensive when it was out. Well, no, I take that back. The Neo Geo was just expensive no matter what. But anyway, getting back to my point, because these were targeted more at an adult demographic, they assumed they would want adult things on them. So that's why you may have, some games on it, or games that had more mature themes, or good grief, porn companies made games for the 3DO. That's why you had, you know, all this full motion video, because they figured adults would like more of watching the drama or probably the acting than a kid who would just want to get in there and shoot turtles or whatever. That's why you also on these might get like the Encyclopedia Britannica on CD that you can do research on and stuff like that. You got to remember, there was not really an internet at this point. There was BBSs you would dial on your phone and type your phone for hours to get a few text pages and stuff like that. So that's why the library gets kind of laughed at today, because you have games, and then you have full motion video games, and then you have like a lot of this trash software, or what's considered trash software today, like the encyclopedias, and like the CDI, has a lot of stuff like that. That's why it's called the interactive multiplayer in this case, because it's letting you know that it's not just a game player. There's more to it, which I think at the time really they thought adults would be into. So of course, it came out, it played games, it got labeled just a game console, so it was too expensive and didn't have enough exciting stuff on there compared to what the other systems did to really succeed as a game console. But at the time, I think they thought there was another area where this could fall into. So it's kind of like video games were for kids, DVDs and laser discs were for adults and kids, depending on what you were watching. Or, I'm sorry, not DVDs, but video cassettes. And then this would fall kind of in between, where it brought the full potential of the CD, which was easy, small, easy to work with, that sort of stuff, plus the benefits of a game console to a more, I don't know, selective market perhaps. And it turned out, for the most part, that market didn't exist. It was pretty much people wanted to game on it. But by the time they kind of figured that out and what was coming out down the pike, it just kind of got eclipsed. But it's really, I think, one of the more underrated systems. In fact, all these systems we're going to talk about in this series are underrated, in my opinion, but to varying degrees. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I just got the 3DO, got games, and yes, I'll even admit there are some crappy games for the 3DO, and there were some complete misfires, but there are some generally really good games to be had on the 3DO as well. And that's what I kind of want to go over. So that's kind of my feelings on the system, kind of my experience with it starting out. If you remember, we do another video series on here called Adventures in Console Repair, where I had one with this one because the CD drive had quit working. I wasn't able to get it working, and I'd always meant to get a replacement laser or something for it and come back to it and fix it. Just never did, partly because shortly after I filmed that episode, I can't remember if it was for a birthday or Christmas or what, my wife got me a FZ1 model, which is fully working and everything. So I can play a 3DO whenever I want. And because of that, I haven't had the focus on getting my only 3DO working. So fortunately, my baby here is kind of set to the side. And, I do have good memories of this. It was my first personal 3DO. Played a lot of games on it, but that's kind of the way it is. So what I'm going to do now, is, I think I've yammered on about it long enough, is I'm going to get some games out here, and I'm going to play them. I'm going to show you the footage of the games. I'm going to talk a little bit about the games. Now I'm going to pretty much turn the sound down on the games because, copyright and all that crap. I don't want to get flagged for having some song on there that sounds like something else. So hope you forgive me on that part, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the games and what I think of them and stuff. So let's get to gaming. All right, so the first 3DO game we're going to check out here is probably one of the most popular on the system, Gex. So Gex is a side-scrolling platformer made up from Crystal Dynamics, which back in the day was probably one of the best developers there was for a system. They made a lot of different games. Um, so I'm going to fire this up here and play a little bit just to let you see. Now, of course, you know, the 3DO being CD based does actually have internal memory, so you can remember where you left off. So here we're going to start out with most of the levels open here, just so we can play around a little bit. Now, of course, Gex was sent over to different systems and whatnot, so it was a lot of ports of it. But as you can see, basically what you're playing is you're a gecko who was sucked into the TV world by your generic baddie, and now you've got to go around and fight them off. And then each level is kind of lampooning and making fun of different types of TV shows. And yeah, that's basically it. Now, Gex himself, of course, you know, this is the 90s, so he is a mascot with Tood. So there's a lot of different things, you know, he does and whatnot. Um, oops. Definitely, I can't jump on those. All right. There we go. But he is a gecko, so he can crawl around ceilings, floors, and stuff, which does add some interesting gameplay elements. And then, of course, he's like Mario and whatever. You can jump on some people on the top. I have not actually played in a while. There we go. Oof. I am not doing very good. But yeah, he makes a lot of wiseacre comments and stuff like that, and talks about different people and yada yada, you know. Uh, Definitely a very enjoyable must-have for the 3DO. Great platformer, great controls, stuff like that. Definitely would take a look. This is one of those that definitely proves that the 3DO has good games on it. I remember the first level, which is what we're going back to now, is like horror based. So it's based on old horror movies and whatnot like that. Yeah, he makes all sorts of jokes and stuff, and some of the jokes are actually still pretty funny, and then some are kind of silly and whatnot. Um, but yeah, definitely one to check out here. Oops. Yeah, he's basically got his tongue to grab items, his tail bash, and he jumps. Because the 3DO came with a 3-button controller. And then, let's see, he can do like a, what was it? There we go, like a tail bash. Controls are actually really tight. This is more me just, I haven't played it in a while, having issues than it is anything else. See, now I've got like super speed. Oh, no, that's right. You have to push down when you do that to actually get anything good going on out of it. But anyway, that's a little bit of Gex. Let me get in the next game here and we'll take a look. So here we're looking at a 3D shooter on the 3DO. This is Total Eclipse. Again, another Crystal Dynamics game. Oops. This one I think came out in 94. I like it. It's a really good space shooter. It actually had a sequel, Solar Eclipse, that came out on the Sega Saturn. This is part of the second level here. Basically, you fight your way through the planetary level, and then you kind of come to a pit, and then you kind of go into the pit, kind of like Return of the Jedi style. You dive into it, and then you try and survive to get to the end so that you can get to the next level. This is kind of like how you go level to level, basically. It gets pretty rough. The ship is kind of big for the screen. But it is fun, and it does show off the graphical capabilities of the 3DO. Because, you know, keep in mind, if this is a 1994 release, think about what was out at the time. The what, Super Nintendo, which I don't think could have quite managed this kind of level of graphics, but kind of goes back to what I was saying. This is kind of obscenely expensive, marketed to adults who are going to want more serious games and more realistic graphics like this and whatnot. So, but yeah, I mean, a fun shooter. I honestly, off the top of my head, don't know if there was a third game in the series. If there was, I would love to play it because I like them both. This one gets pretty hard. I did actually beat Solar Eclipse on the Saturn. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is some pretty decent graphics, and you can even do a barrel roll. How cool is that? I think I picked up a really kind of cruddy power up there, but yeah, Total Eclipse, Crystal Dynamics. I would definitely take a look. All right, off to the next game. All right, so the last one we're going to look at here for the 3DO, I picked mostly to illustrate my point that at the time these systems came out, they were not considered game consoles. They were considered interactive media devices that happened to also play games. And in a way, they were kind of like almost like a cell phone. It's a phone, but then it also does games and it also does internet and blah, blah, blah. This was a CD player that also happened to play games and also had entertainment value and stuff like that. So basically what you got here is an interactive-ish comedy CD, basically. I mean, it's not really a game. Basically what you're doing is you load it up, and there, of course, is Dennis Miller doing his, witty political one-liner joke kind of stuff. And basically what you would do is you push left and right to pick a month, and then you push up and down to pick a topic. So you might say, ooh, what was funny in world news or something in April? And then you would hit A, and it would load a joke from Dennis Miller. And then basically he'd tell you his 2 or 3 liner, 1 liner, whatever the joke happened to be for that month. And so you've got 12 months for 8 topics, so it's whatever that works out to. If you hit the play button on the controller, he just like goes through the whole year and tells us jokes, and it kind of becomes like a comedy routine. I'm going to turn it up a little bit here, and I'll go ahead and maybe I'll pick a showbiz joke here. Let's see. Let's do, I don't know, let's do August here. We'll listen to a joke. All right, so basically, like I said, this is it. Literally, you pick a month, you pick a topic, you hit the button, you hear a joke, you pick a topic, you hit play, he just goes through all the jokes. This is not a game. This was meant for entertainment for adults who like, to hear political jokes and humor and Dennis Miller and stuff like that. It's more like today if you bought a stand-up comedy disc for like a PS3 and watched the movie. But back then, they couldn't do full movies, so they would do stuff like this. This is where that whole multimedia interactive stuff comes in. So basically, hit your button. Yeah, and that's basically it. So, I mean, today this is a piece of shit joke that nobody would give time of day to, but back in the day with no internet, DVDs weren't out, video cassettes were, but they were, rental or poor quality or whatnot, and CDs are easy to get. You could have maybe went to the game store and got this disc for like 20 or 30 bucks or whatever it was originally, and you had a night of comedy with Dennis Miller. So this is where these systems kind of get a bad rap, because today it just isn't understood what these kind of titles were meant for. And I have to admit to you, this is not fun. I don't really find him funny, but I understand at the time what they were going for. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at some of the 3DO games here. And like I said, um, after we kind of get through the main intros of the systems and a few gems for each one, or a few different titles for each one, maybe we can get more into the libraries in a second series. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.